It began with a 911 call that would haunt every officer who heard it. A trembling young voice came through the line, soft, scared, and uncertain. The boy spoke in broken English, struggling to describe what had just happened inside his home. He didn't know his address. He barely knew what to say. But one thing was clear: something was terribly wrong. The dispatcher tried to remain calm, asking gentle questions, but the boy's words grew more disturbing by the second. He said his mother wasn't moving, that there was blood all over the floor, and that his baby sister was still sleeping nearby. When asked what happened, he replied in a whisper that sent chills through the room. "She's hurt. She's not breathing." The dispatcher's voice tightened. "What did you do?" And then came the confession, quiet, shaking, and almost unreal. He said he had taken pictures and sent them to his friends online. In that moment, the dispatcher realized she wasn't speaking to a witness, she was speaking to the killer. The caller was 13-year-old Derek Rosa, a boy whose unimaginable words would soon make national headlines. Before we uncover the tragic details behind this case, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because what follows is one of the most chilling stories of a child's descent into darkness the world has ever seen. On the night of October 12, 2023, officers rushed to a luxury apartment complex in Hialeah, Florida, responding to that very call. What they found inside would stay with them forever. The door was slightly open. The air inside was still, heavy, and cold. There, standing in the hallway, was Derek, his hands and clothes stained with blood, his face eerily calm. A newborn baby slept peacefully in a nearby crib, completely untouched by the horror that had just unfolded. When detectives entered the bedroom, they were met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. Irina Garcia, Derek's 39-year-old mother, lay lifeless on her bed, still holding her week-old daughter in her arms. She had been stabbed more than 40 times, a brutality no one could reconcile with the small, quiet boy standing in front of them. The investigation began immediately. Detectives found a weapon, a bloodied kitchen knife discarded nearby. Then came the next shock. Derek had taken photos of his mother's body and sent them to an online friend, someone he knew only through video games. He told investigators that after the attack, he planned to end his own life using his stepfather's gun, a loaded Glock 19 found resting on the living room couch. Doorbell camera footage soon filled in the missing pieces. Moments before the murder, Irina had been seen gently rocking her baby and smiling as she spoke to Derek in Spanish, reminding him not to run too fast. He brushed her off and stepped outside only to return minutes later, his anger silently building to an unspeakable act. Detectives were left stunned. What could drive a 13-year-old and honor roll student with no history of violence to do something so cold and irreversible? As the night wore on, answers began to emerge. They discovered that Derek had lived a quiet, structured life with his mother, who was known to be loving and devoted. But everything changed when Irina gave birth to a new baby girl. Her attention shifted entirely to the newborn, and Derek, once the center of her world, began to feel invisible. Friends and family would later describe him as distant, jealous, and withdrawn. His stepfather, a truck driver often away for weeks at a time, was rarely home. That absence left a void one Irina tried to fill with her own care and affection, but it was never enough. Inside that emotional vacuum, resentment took root. And on that quiet October night, it erupted in the most violent way imaginable. The boy who once sounded terrified on that 911 call now sat calmly across from detectives. Gone was the trembling voice that begged for help. In its place stood a 13-year-old who appeared strangely composed, cooperative, polite, even articulate. When Derek Rosa began speaking with investigators, his tone was steady, his gaze clear. He described his family life in a way that sounded almost ordinary. Weekends with his stepfather, Frank Ramos. Time spent at home with his mother and newborn sister. Nothing seemed out of place. But beneath that calm exterior, detectives sensed something dark, something cold and calculated. When officers asked him to recount the events of that night, Derek hesitated for just a moment before quietly explaining that he had gone to bed around 10. His mother, he said, had done the same. Everything sounded routine until they asked about the knife. Without emotion, Derek described it as a big kitchen knife with a purple handle, casually estimating its size. His lack of remorse stunned investigators. He wasn't stumbling over words or choking on guilt. He spoke as if describing an ordinary object, not the weapon that had ended his mother's life. Detectives pressed further, asking about the moments after the murder. Derek told them he had gone into his stepfather's closet, where he found a Glock 19 and another gun with a silver slide and dark blue handle. He calmly explained that he loaded the magazine, pulled back the slide, and almost turned the weapon on himself, but couldn't bring himself to do it. His words chilled the room. It was as if the weight of his actions hadn't yet reached him. The conversation took another disturbing turn when Derek admitted to calling one of his friends after the killing. Not a classmate or neighbor, but an online gaming friend known only by the name Sweden. He said they had met through video games 3 years earlier and often spoke on weekends. To this stranger, Derek confessed what he had done and even sent photos to of his mother's lifeless body and one of himself, hands drenched in blood. When detectives asked what the friend said, Derek replied, almost detached. He couldn't believe it. That digital confession revealed the terrifying truth. Derek had not only taken a life, he had shared the aftermath with someone hundreds of miles away, as if it were another level in a game. Detective Gonzalez soon noticed faint red stains on Derek's shirt and hands. When asked if it was blood, Derek simply nodded. "I think it is," he said quietly, showing his palms. There was no trembling, no tears, just a boy acknowledging the horror he had caused with a calmness that unnerved even the most seasoned investigators. When questioned about the baby, Derek insisted he never touched his sister. She had been asleep the entire time. Then came the hardest question of all: why? Derek shifted in his chair, asking if he could go to the bathroom before answering. But when he returned, the detectives pressed him again. His silence grew longer. Finally, when asked if he wanted a lawyer, Derek nodded. The interview ended at 3:05 a.m., leaving the most crucial question: why did you kill your mother? Forever unanswered. Despite his refusal to confess outright, the evidence told its own story. The knife, the photos, the doorbell footage, and the chilling baby monitor video all revealed a disturbing pattern. Derek had waited for his mother to fall asleep, stood over her in the darkness, and struck more than 40 times. It was not an accident. It was premeditated. Further investigation uncovered Google searches Derek made just hours before the murder. Carotid artery image diagram. What is the best place to stab someone? Is a small knife good for killing? Each search painted the picture of a boy methodically planning the unthinkable. On October 15, 2023, Derek Rosa made his first court appearance, charged with first-degree murder. Inside the courtroom, he showed no visible emotion, no tears, no fear, just the same cold composure that had unsettled detectives days earlier. His defense attorney requested more time, arguing that Derek's young age and mental state needed further evaluation. They cited his diagnoses of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, claiming these conditions might have impaired his judgment. But prosecutors disagreed, presenting his search history as proof that the murder was carefully planned. Psychologists later observed that Derek's post-crime behavior, taking photos, sharing them, remaining emotionally flat, reflected traits often associated with psychopathy. He seemed detached from the gravity of what he had done, almost studying it like an outsider watching his own actions. In court, his grandmother sat among the spectators, tears streaming down her face. As the session ended, she blew him a kiss, a silent symbol of love amid unthinkable tragedy. Outside, more than 50 supporters rallied with signs that read, "He's just a child and give Derek a chance to heal." They argued that despite the horror of his actions, his age should grant him a second chance. But not everyone agreed. On December 15, 2023, a pivotal hearing determined that Derek would remain in adult custody. The judge ruled that the crime's premeditated nature outweighed his age or diagnoses. Critics called it heartless. Supporters called it justice. The trial has since reignited a painful national debate. Meanwhile, prosecutors stand firm, insisting that the evidence, his planning, his calmness, his own words proves that he knew exactly what he was doing. The trial has since reignited a painful national debate. Should minors who commit unimaginable crimes be given the chance to reform, or should they face the full weight of adult punishment? There are no easy answers. As of now, Derek Rosa remains under 24-hour supervision, awaiting his final sentencing while the world watches, questions, and wonders how innocence can twist into something so dark. What do you think drove Derek to commit such an act? There are no easy answers. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more gripping true crime stories, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe.